and we can.
The phone's totally fine
Awesome.
with me if you guys are okay with that.
So I sent them the questions anonymized, so no one knows who sent what. I think it's sorted by alphabetical, and I'm sure there's a lot of overlaps, which is great.
Yeah, before we get started with that, does anyone just like, because all of you guys saw this presentation in the morning, which is awesome. You guys are two fantastic presenters. Does anyone just like have any questions from that? It doesn't have to be related to the questions that you asked, but anything that like wasn't clear, anything that you wish they would have talked more about.
Maybe the resources, because those usually go by pretty fast at the end.
What were the resources? Do you have that here?
Actually,
Yeah.
wait,
Can
do you
I
want to
see it?
pull up the full length presentation, not the big one? Because that one has,
Me?
yeah, that one has all of the resources. You had a question?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We saw examples of it, but what's like the actual definition of the difference between empathy and sympathy?
Yeah, so I don't know like verbatim the differences, but empathy is more kind of like driven with like connection, and kind of like a sympathetic response is like, I would say like empathy, you're kind of trying to meet them where they're at, and just like it's not as much about like what you say, it's more so just making sure that you're kind of more in it with them, if that makes any sense. Sympathy is kind of like more of a kind of like a step back. Do you have a good definition of empathy?
Yeah, when I think about sympathy, just in practice, I think more about someone looking at you and kind of sensory-wise, like seeing what's going on. Like they can hear what you're saying, they can see what you're going through, but they don't actually put that into emotion or try and connect that with themselves. So a lot about what Brene was saying in that video is that like exactly what I just said, like empathy is about connection. It's about going inside of you and saying, okay, something maybe really different happened to me, but made me feel the same way. So I'm gonna express that to them so that they know that I know what they're going through.
Kind of
Does
making,
that kind of,
making sure their emotions feel seen, I would say, is like the biggest thing. And I don't know if Zachariah or like Anna pointed this out, but the video I feel like kind of does give sympathy a bad rap. I know like the first time I watched it, have you seen the little?
No, I haven't, but I kind of understand.
Yeah.
I empathize with you.
Exactly. There we go. That's empathy right there. But it kind of like, I remember the first time I watched it, afterwards I was like, okay, like I'm never gonna be sympathetic again. Like empathy is obviously like the thing I should be doing all the time, and that's where I should be at. But like that's not the case. It's not realistic for you to be empathetic all the time, because being empathetic takes a lot of energy, and it's like Anna was saying, like really connecting with like how they're feeling emotionally, and that can be a lot depending on a certain moment. So like if you're also going through a lot, kind of your own personal issues, and a friend is talking to you about what they're going through, in that moment it might be hard for you to empathize, and it's okay to be sympathetic in that moment, but kind of telling your friend where you're at and making sure like, hey, like I love you, I care about you, but like I'm just not in the headspace to like be a source of help to you right now.
does that kind of clarify the difference a little bit more? Please let me know if you have any more questions regarding the difference. Maybe we can talk more about maybe examples that could clear things up. So before we get into the questions, do you guys want us to clarify about resources, or do you just look at it? Yeah.
What is Live Well?
So Live Well is actually where we work.
Oh, okay.
And Live Well is funded by students, by their student fees,
Ooh.
and we're student employees, and the purpose of Live Well is to train and educate students on their health and well-being and good practices, and that goes beyond like nutrition and exercise, but more like day-to-day practices,
Yeah. That's awesome.
mental wellness. Yeah.
So they told you guys about like our like two advocates that we have in Live Well. We have an interpersonal violence advocate, Brittany, and we have Amanda, who's student coaching and care.
Oh, what student?
She's a student coaching and care advocate. So,
Yeah. Oh, cool.
So she's more so just like any kind of like college stressors, like, how to pay like you're having trouble paying tuition, you're having trouble with friends or roommate, versus Brittany is, anything interpersonal violence related. And they're both confidential. I know Brittany especially, she doesn't have to report anything that you talk to her about to like Title IX or anything unless you want to report. So she's a great person to go to if you just want to know what your options are, what the process would look like, or anything like that. Yeah, so these are some resources that we don't really go over in the FIG presentation. But did you guys get those little resource cards? Awesome. Anna and Zachariah were on it. But
I never have them.
I have a fatty sack in my backpack all the time. If you ever like see me on campus and you want one, I can give you one. Like I have so many. So Hall Health, do you guys know about like the one free visit you get every quarter for Hall Health? Okay, so basically, through like student fees and Justice Fee being a student, you can go to Hall Health, which is just kind of like your regular kind of like health clinic. You're feeling really sick, you wanna like, you think you might have the flu, you might have a cold, you wanna go see a provider. You get one free visit a quarter with Hall Health. And then if you need any more than that, they accept insurance, and all of that. They also provide some type of mental health resources. They have more kind of like psychiatry, so like they can prescribe meds or anything like that. But that's the main thing with Hall Health. You just kind of do have to be worried about that one visit a quarter, because if you do go over it, then I don't know if they like charge you or if it just goes to your insurance.
It bills your insurance, but if your insurance isn't compatible with UW, then you just get charged.
Yeah.
So I want to just reiterate that she said it's one free visit
Yeah.
per quarter. It's not really free.
Yeah.
You're paying for it with your tuition, or your parents are paying for it with your tuition. So you don't have it means you don't have to pay anything upfront, but you should really take advantage of that because you or your parents are already paying for it. Could you also speak to the difference between Hall Health and Counseling Center?
Yeah, so the counseling center is definitely more of like mental health services. Every quarter, I think you get 6 free sessions,
I
and
think it's, I know 10.
Wow.
10.
Wow,
So
that's amazing.
that's a lot. Okay, yeah. So at the counseling center, they have therapists, and it's less about psychiatry, so there's less
they can't
prescriptions and stuff like that.
So it's more for like talk therapy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you go to Schmitz, you have to do kind of like an eval so they can see what your needs are, because a lot of people have different needs in terms of talk therapy. And then you kind of go through a few trials, like see who works for you, and then they start scheduling you regularly. This is kind of one of those things that piles up really fast for Schmitz, and it fills up. So I guess like the earlier you get your name on the list, the faster you can get the services that you want. Because
You could probably like reschedule it or cancel it later if you don't need it, right?
Yeah,
you
exactly.
totally
But it's better to have the appointment than to be competing with like a bunch of other students with it, because it is somewhat of a limited resource on campus.
And again, with counseling too, they also will bill your insurance. So again, like before you go in, it's really good to just double check to make sure that they do accept your insurance, just because you don't want to be there and then be told like upfront that you have to pay it. You have to go pay. You need to do.
And then one final note on the payment there is that if whoever provides your insurance doesn't really want you to go to therapy or anything like that, there is a way that Schmitz can make it just an undisclosed charge on your insurance. And since it doesn't have a copay, then there's no payment bill going to who is in charge of your parents. But if they
Wow.
look over it, they can see
Wow,
undisclosed charge.
that's great.
Yeah, which is more common than you would think. So it's a
Okay.
really good service that they offer.
Essentially, the school has structured it so that finances will not be a barrier for you to seek help. So if you need/want the help, you should take the help. For context, once you graduate, you have to pay for all these out of pocket. For context, if you want to see a counselor in Seattle, the hourly rate, the lowest is like $60 an hour. It ranges between $60 to $100 an hour. So when you get your job, some employee assistance programs, it will be part of your benefits. The employer will cover like X sessions per period as a part of their well-being care. But if your employer doesn't provide that, it's $60 to $100 per hour for one time that you go see a counselor, right? So this is being built into your tuition and fees. It is an incredible resource that you should take advantage of while your tuition is paying for it. It's deeply discounted.
Definitely.
And I want to just clarify that you don't have to have like an issue to go see the counseling center. You don't have to have gone through like a traumatic event, nothing dramatic. Like you could just go and like talk about your well-being,
And
your stress.
Yeah, and when I was like, this is something that's gonna come up in when we answer the questions, but I know there were a couple questions that kind of brought that up. It's like, can I go seek help even if I'm not like diagnosed with like anxiety or depression? And like, that is something like, if you ever feel like you need someone to talk to, like, it's so much better to seek help early rather than when the issues progress to this point where you feel like really overwhelmed. It's kind of to like, not an unbearable point, but a point where it's really interfering with your daily activities, your kind of likelihood to go to class and all of that. And so like I've done counseling and I think it's a like fantastic resource. It's just a way for you to like talk for an hour about whatever you want to talk about, and it's like not when you only talk to your friend and they like want to make it about them or they kind of try to steer you off topic. Like this is someone who's like there to listen to you for an hour, and it could be as simple as just like when you're applying to jobs. I know all of you guys are in informatics, and like applying to like tech jobs can be really stressful. It can be really difficult, and like if you just want someone to like talk through it with and just kind of talk about how you're feeling, you know, getting rejections from jobs sucks and it can really take a toll on you. And so if you really just like want someone to talk to, like counselors are fantastic people to do so, and it's never too early to seek help. Or your issue's never like too small to get help, if that makes any sense. And then the DRS is basically just like, if you need any like testing accommodations, or let's say like you break your leg and you're having trouble in class, if you go to the DRS, they can help make accommodations for you. But it's not retroactive. So like if you're taking a test and you need extra testing accommodations, but you realize that after you've taken your first midterm, they can't go back in and like change your grade. Like they can only help you before you like pull this out.
Oh.
And this is another one of those services where the earlier you go, the better, because it takes so long for all the processing to go through. It could be like 2 weeks before you actually get your accommodation. So if you know, like your final is on December 14th or whatever, like, and you need extra time, like now is the time, or now in the next few weeks is the time to like get it dealt with before it stacks up. Because it definitely stacks up during midterms, and now we're kind of getting into the heat of midterms.
Any questions about resources before we get into the questions you guys asked? Do you want to start it off?
Sure. Okay, so the first question is, are mental health issues such as anxiety and depression legitimate enough to get accommodations even if it
Wow.
isn't diagnosed as being extremely severe?
Huh.
So definitely. It's really hard to diagnose things like that in terms of severity, and it's very subjective for some counselors. So the DRS will definitely help you kind of like go through the discourse of like what is qualifying and what is not. But I would say for the most part, UW is very accommodating in that way.
Are there any mental health clubs or organizations on campus? There's a bunch. I know that you can go online and look at the different like mental health or kind of health and wellness RSOs. And they usually, I think they actually all have like the RSOs emails or any of that. So if you want to go and reach out to them, kind of like a shameless plug for us. We're peer health educators. We work within Live Well, like Anna was saying. And we do programming throughout the school year. So you'll see us like tabling. We're doing tabling. We're doing like a little kind of like exhibition for like Halloween and Oath. So check us out. It'll be really fun, really cool. But we do a lot of programming throughout the year doing tabling, and we love volunteers. We love any help we can get. So if you guys are ever interested in being involved in kind of like student health and wellness, we can put up our email, and you can email us and we can put you on mailing list. So whenever we do need volunteers, we'll reach out to you. Also, we have, how would you explain Healthy Huskies? We're basically kind of like starting a new program. Probably it might be at the beginning of spring quarter or even like beginning of fall quarter next year, but it's kind of, we used to do like a peer health educators program. We're replacing that with Healthy Huskies. I don't know if any of you guys had peer health educators at your high school, but basically it's kind of to learn about health and wellness, to kind of learn basics around that. And if you're like interested in learning more, kind of like a much deeper dive than like the 1 hour presentation you guys got from Zachariah or Anna, that's what Healthy Huskies is going to be. Yeah.
I think the ones that they touch upon are great orgs if you want to like promote
Yeah.
good mental health. But if you just want like mental health, like care for yourself, I would say that can come in any form of community or organization or relationship that you have in your life. It doesn't have to come through a mental health org or mental health resource, right? So for many people, that's like their closest family, closest friends. their closest X community, that's fine too.
Like lean on the people like in your major and in your classes. Like I know like info is like a relatively small major, and like everyone that I know in info like has their like they're close with their info friends, so like hang out with them outside of classes. So like lean on your friends that like are going through similar experiences as you. Like they're the people who are taking the same classes, applying for really similar jobs. So whenever you're kind of stressed about that, like lean on each other. And you know, they talked about how to support a friend when you guys listened to Zachariah and Anna earlier today, and just like leaning on people who have been through similar experiences can be really helpful.
Want me to read the next?
Yeah.
Okay. So the next question is, do you have any advice on staying calm before exams? And this is a huge one because definitely in my first few quarters, I got like really bad test anxiety and I would kind of like shake during my exams. And one thing that really helped me before that was to take time, like the day of, like say your exam is at like 2:30, I just wouldn't study in the morning because it kind of gives you like these last minute glimpses of like, oh, I don't know that. And then that kind of like pumps you up and stresses you out in the wrong way, right? So taking the time to like breathe and meditate, if you guys have ever like taken like 3 minutes just to like breathe, listen to your lungs, like honestly, it helps so much. And another thing is kind of just like have a mantra for yourself. Like one of them for me is like, this one exam is not going to change my life, no matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's a final or a midterm. In the long run, it won't really affect my life that much, right? If at all. But in the moment, right, it feels like, oh, like this is my like info final. And if I don't pass, I can't get into the next class. But kind of once you start going down that spiral of thoughts, you're focusing less on your academics and more on your self-doubt. But I think the more that you take the time and like purposefully say to yourself, like, I can succeed, but it's not the end of the world if I don't get a great score on this, right? There's always second chances and you have so long here, right? You guys are all freshmen, so you have 3 more years to make it up or find something else if it's not compatible. But definitely like having something for yourself, even like writing it out. I definitely have, like my friends and I like write out our mantras all the time and we're like, you're more than this one class or something like that. That helps a lot.
Do you have any tips or routines that you recommend us to take on as college students to become / maintain the healthiest versions of ourselves, both mentally and physically? I know like for physically, it's a really easy answer to say like, get exercise, go to the IMA, work out, find whatever kind of like fitness classes you like, yoga, CrossFit, bar classes, I don't know, insert whatever classes you want. But even like, I know like for me, during the school year, I get really stressed and like, I don't have 2 hours to go dedicate myself to like walk down to the IMA and come back. And you, like, if you're feeling like that as well, just like movement is such a good way to kind of like take care of yourself physically, like making sure like you're walking to class, or like if you're going down to Uville, it's really easy to just like order an Uber. But like it's like a 10 or like 15 or 20-minute walk depending on where you live, if you guys live on campus. And so just like walking places instead of like busing and driving if it's possible, and just like kind of getting that movement is really helpful. Mentally, I think thinking about like what coping mechanisms work for you and what stress relievers work for you, because there's no like one stress reliever that's gonna like work for all of us. And that's a really personal experience, but kind of like thinking about like what makes you feel calm, and like when you're really stressed out about an exam or about life, like what makes you feel better. I'm actually in like a stress and coping class right now, so we talked about this a lot.
You're in a class?
Yeah, it's a psych major class. So if any of you guys are ever doubling in psych and info, there's a stress and coping class. It's fantastic. Lauren Graham is a fantastic human. But one of the things that we talk a lot about with like coping is like finding immediate rewards in your coping mechanisms, especially with school when like you're working on a project or you're studying for an exam and you don't feel like you're making progress. Like do something that you know you're gonna like feel the reward immediately. Like if you know you like coloring, like take like 20 minutes to do that, and then you're like, wow, I like colored this really cool thing, or like cleaning your room, or like anything like that where you feel like, okay, like I did this, I conquered something, I can go on and study for this test and know I can feel the same way about like how much I'm able to study and progress on this assignment.
Can I just say one more thing? So mentally, it's really easy to get stressed out about like efficiency or timing of things. Like, oh, if I'm not studying for like 9 hours today and I don't like find the fastest way home, like things like that. It's really okay to like take 20 minutes or even longer to do what you need to do to feel emotionally better. And that can look so different for so many people. And it's really helpful to just like put away your phone and just not look at it, because the problem with like having that like efficiency mindset is that you're really like not that efficient when you're stressed out about being efficient, which I've definitely experienced before. But the more that I realize that, the more time I take for myself, and just make sure that like I'm doing the things that matter, because it will help me be the most effective studier or the most effective presentation giver or whatever, right? Like it's one of these like quality over quantity things. But yeah, when you are stressed out about so many things and you feel weighed down mentally, it's good to take a break, and it's valid, right? It's super valid to like not be thinking about school for a while or whatever's stressing you out. Okay, so the next question is, does the sunlight therapy that UW provides during winter actually help in combating seasonal depression? So if you guys haven't heard of that yet, in Hall Health, they have light therapy. Has everyone heard of seasonal depression? Yeah. So very real in Seattle. If you're not from around here, it's dark for like 10 and a half months. But Hall Health does give light therapy, and basically what that is to supplement the lack of sunlight so that you can make enough vitamin D in your skin. And that can help you in so many ways.
Is it free?
It's free. Yeah, I think so.
Can staff go?
Probably. I think it's just like a
I'm
room.
gonna look it up right now. Hall
Yeah.
Health Light Therapy.
Yeah.
Double check
So-
that, yeah.
I'm not, yeah. It should be. I don't know. Like it's not like a person or
I will
anything.
update
It's
you.
Literally just a
Yeah.
room. Thank you.
Yeah.
But I would say yes for multiple reasons. One, objectively, it will help your body make more vitamin D. It's just, it will work. But another thing is it gives you the space and kind of like the agency to take care of your body. It's just another practice that you can have to go out and leave the space that you're comfortable in, but maybe that space is also a space that stresses you out, right? Like maybe your dorm room, like bedroom is super comfortable, right? But your dorm is not the most encouraging place or comfortable in terms of the other people. So it kind of gives you like this opportunity to go, spend the time, walk over to Hall Health and kind of placebo yourself, but also it works. So it definitely helps. Yeah.
So it turns out
Not free.
that's available at Hall Health, the Ethnic Cultural Center,
Ooh,
and the Counseling Center.
oh, awesome.
So it's like all over.
Yeah.
It is free to students. It is ambiguous what the cost is for staff. But it looks like the difference is that for Hall Health, you have to go through a brief intake appointment before they let you use it. But for the other two venues, they just let you use it.
Oh, cool. And if you guys don't know where the ECC is, the Ethnic Cultural Center, it's in West Campus, and then Schmitz Hall is like at the very like beginning of West Campus.
Where that scary, terrible bridge is with like 7 staircases.
God, that place is terrifying.
I'll send a link to this in the follow-up to the class. I'm gonna check out the one that's on West Campus because I work near there.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, honestly, they probably just.
Yeah,
Don't take my
I'm gonna do the one that doesn't require an intake,
Yeah, exactly.
so I can just slip in.
Okay, how can I help out a friend that I see struggling to balance their classwork and social life? Definitely like remind them to take breaks and even like take breaks with them. Like making sure that like you're like, hey, like let's get dinner tonight, or like even like let's go, you know, like grab coffee, let's go to like let's study together, making sure that like they're not just like kind of locked up in third floor O's by themselves, like not talking to anyone for hours on hours, like making sure that they're getting that social interaction because it's so important. And I think it's a lot more important than we make it out to be, that like we're making sure that we're hanging out with people we like, hanging out, just like having that kind of like stress relief of that is like super important. So just making sure that like you can spend time with them and like study with them, like change up like the place you study. Like you don't have to be in Oda all the time. You don't have to be in Sue's. Like there's so many cool coffee shops on the app. Like go there and get a change of scenery. Yeah.
So kind of like a precursor to that is how can we detect that a peer is struggling and how can we help? So definitely signs are different for everyone. For one of your friends, it could be like you listen to their breathing and they get like really caught up in their breathing and they have to like I can't really demonstrate it, but they like can't catch their breath sometimes. So that's like kind of one of the more audible, visible things that you can see in a friend. But another one is just kind of reflecting on their patterns. Like maybe earlier in the quarter, they would go out a lot more with you and they would spend a lot more time just talking, like not even about school or whatever. And now you've kind of seen that they're kind of becoming more reclusive or they're kind of adopting objectively unhealthy habits. Like they change their eating habits so they're not eating as well. And that can, like eating well can look different for other people, but if it's like they're eating 7 packs of ramen a day, that might be a sign that they are not in a great place, right?
So changes.
Yeah. Just noticing changes. It's definitely hard if you're talking about people that you just met this quarter, right? We're only like 4 or 5 weeks in. We've only known these people for like a month. But I think that's like a good amount of time to see like, okay, this person, like they used to like be so happy and like kind of carefree and now they're like always in third floor ode or something like that. So I think just like taking the time to look for that in yourself and others, noticing changes, it can vary from person to person is really the short answer, but if they're your friends, it's kind of like an instinctual thing to sense that they're like different. And what was the follow-up to that? How can we help them out?
I think that's it.
How can we help? Like just going back to the FIG presentation, that slide that said like show that you care. One of them was to express your care, concern, and empathy. And that could be as simple as being like the bear and being like, hey, like I'm here for you. I have no idea what you're going through, but I want to be here for you, right? So just verbalizing that is very comforting.
How can you prevent yourself from losing motivation or burning out in college? Making sure, and it kind of goes back to what Anna was saying earlier about like, I feel like it's really easy to have a mentality of like, I need to be studying for 9 hours, and if I'm not studying all day, then like I'm doing something wrong, I'm losing it, like precious studying time, and like that's not the case. Making sure that you're still integrating things that you enjoy doing, things that are kind of like coping mechanisms for you, making sure you're still like taking care of yourself and prioritizing like your own well-being. Like if like, you know, a movie that you love is coming out, and like go see that movie on a Saturday night, even if you have like a midterm on Monday, like those 2 hours like will not make a large difference to you, right? So making sure that you're still doing things you really love and you're like also taking classes that you really like. And I know that like sometimes in college, like you just have to take classes because it's required for your major, and like that's totally fine. But making sure that like every quarter you at least have like one class that you're really excited about. Because I know for me personally, like I've had quarters where I was just like only taking classes I had to take, and like those were the quarters that I actually did like the worst academically because I wasn't like excited about the classes. I didn't like feel excited to study. Like making sure you're still taking classes you really like and kind of working that into your schedule somehow. They can be like little seminars. They don't have to be like any big like 5-credit classes.
Yeah, so when I was in college, my first semester, my fun class was chemistry because I liked chemistry in high school, and then I realized that organic chemistry is very different from high school chemistry. So I took the class, and people were like, "Why are you taking this class? You're a business major. Like this is a weeder class for pre-meds, right?" But I took it as my fun class, and then later on, I took like a language class for fun. Some of my friends took like dance classes or bongo classes or swimming classes at the University of Michigan. So like everyone needs some relief, right? And we heard that from the seniors and the juniors who came in previous weeks that you should not take all STEM classes every quarter because you're gonna go crazy, right? So make sure you build in courses for that too.
And a note on that is if you are somehow under some financial obligation or whatnot to only take a certain series at a time, or you need to take like bio, gen chem, and like physics all in the same quarter, like sometimes that is a circumstance and you really can't get over it. But there are a lot of like classes at the IMA, and those are very affordable.
Oh,
and
yeah.
those are a good affordable in the sense that they're probably like 1/10 of the cost of classes outside of the
It's
university.
usually like $60 for the whole quarter.
So it's like $6 a class, yeah. So if you can't actually take like Psych of Sex as your fun class this quarter, you can take like a fun exercise class. And they don't have to be like full on like circuit training, blah, 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 like kickboxing. It can be dance or it can be yoga, right? But kind of having that mandated schedule of like getting that in is kind of good accountability for some people, especially if they can't fit in like ceramics or whatever into their academic schedule. Another question, and this is a big one, how can I get work done while studying with friends? How many of you guys have like tried to study with friends this quarter? Yeah, how well did it work? Like, not that great, right? So this is kind of one of those balancing acts that really just, it comes with time as a student, but I think the earlier you realize like maybe studying with your friends is not always the best idea, the more productive you can be. Definitely my friends know this by now, like sometimes I can come over, and it just depends on the assignment. I can come over and like, maybe for me, it's like I can do a math assignment while I'm talking to other people, but if it requires any sort of reading or analysis, I really have to like kind of tune everyone out. And that could mean really going to another place, like another building or whatever, and working independently. So that's definitely a personal thing, like what works best with and without people. But it's okay to acknowledge that working with other people all the time is not really the best thing in college. And there are some nights like before exams, and you'll see this in the next few quarters, that if you have an exam and like you've kind of prepped yourself before you've talked to other people, like maybe you spent a week and a half studying independently, then you can spend the last 2 or 3 days with the other people kind of filling in the gaps. But starting from the beginning, when you're trying to review for something is not always the most helpful with other people. So I would say learn where you work the best and like what kind of activities you can do while hearing a lot of ambient or like background noises, and then go from there.
And even like I'm like a fan of like studying in groups depending on like what the classes, and you're gonna learn like what classes really require you to study alone versus like studying in a group setting. And I think even if like you're studying like with a group, like really being like, okay, we're gonna study for like 30 minutes straight, like we're gonna like study, we're gonna do practice problems together, and then we'll give ourselves a 10-minute break and we can talk about whatever we want to talk about. We can talk about, you know, the game that happened last weekend or like any plans we have for the weekend. But making sure that like you're holding each other accountable is really important, and knowing that like, hey, like we're all gonna feel better about this if like we actually are productive through this next 2 hours versus just like sitting and talking. How do some of the mental health services work? We talked about that. We already talked about how to like tell if a friend's okay. How do you cope with losing points because you can't attend class due to physical and mental health? I would say really like reach out to your professors, like especially if you're sick, and even if it's just like the common cold, like, you know, something that like you feel like is something they hear a lot, like they are more than willing to help and kind of accommodate you. If you reach out to a professor, they will kind of meet you where you are. The fact that you're reaching out to them shows that you cared and you did just miss class because you wanted an extra hour of sleep. So really like reaching out to them would be your best bet for that. And
And another thing is like usually clicker points are like less than 10%. So I like, yes, it's important to attend class because you're paying for it. But if you have to miss, it's okay like once or twice a quarter to miss. And a lot of professors have adopted the practice of adding like 5 extra points at the end of the quarter just to give you a little bit more of a buffer.
Yep, I agree. Like communication is expected because it shows you care. and it shows respect, right? So a few weeks ago, someone in this class emailed me like apologizing for missing class accidentally, and I was like, oh, I just want to make sure you're okay. And they confessed that they like misread their schedule and were playing ultimate frisbee at that time instead. And I was like, good for you, man. Like ultimate frisbee is important if it gives you life, right? And this is why I record the sessions. Like I don't care if you're here. I care about your well-being. And I hope that you're learning through these sessions. But if there's something else you need to do in this 15 minutes that will enhance your well-being, please go do it. Right? A student emailed me today saying like, hey, I have family that's visiting from overseas, and this is my last few hours before they leave. Is it okay if I miss class? And I was like, do what you need to do. Right? So do what you need to do. Most professors, most instructors will understand that you are more than just an attendee of their class, but the expectation for communication is there.
Yeah, and that's like an important thing to notice, especially like coming from high school. Like you guys probably get like, you definitely get the chance to like know your teachers and they know you and they know like a little bit about you versus like those of your professors will know like nothing about your life and they are used to like students like not showing up to class time, just showing up for like the midterms and finals and like that's it. But like if you communicate with your professors, like they are definitely like willing to help. You just need to make sure that you are communicating. And they are more than just like that scary person at the podium. They are actually humans.
And another thing is, if this becomes like a reoccurring thing, or you feel like you were not justly accommodated by your professor, this is where Amanda can come in, because Amanda has worked at this university for like 20 years, and she knows every person on campus. So she can really help you out if those professors aren't really hearing you. She's kind of on that like upper staff level that can really get you kind of that last push forward for more of an accommodation. Good?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question is, how do you get over feeling guilty that the disability is preventing you from accomplishing as much as your peers? So this is a really important and heavy topic in university, and I'll just start off by saying that our society and our systems do not appreciate people with disabilities or recognize the fact that disabilities exist and are truly debilitating, right? At this school and many high-achieving, high-ranking universities, it's super competitive, right? Do you guys talk about competitive stress today? A little bit, and like the stress Olympics? Yeah. So, like personally, I cannot speak for people that do have disabilities or suffer from anything that is debilitating. But I just want to point out, like, this school and this culture is really toxic in that way. And something that you can remind yourself always is like, the system is not working with me right now. And I can see that and feel that. And you can validate yourself. And this is kind of one of those instances where like talking to someone else can help if you feel comfortable with that. I know it's like a very sensitive topic, but especially talking to someone like a confidential advocate or a therapist, they'll kind of help you go through some like emotional practices that you can do for yourself that help out. And I know this doesn't apply to all of you. I'm sure it applies to some of you, but it's kind of just one of those things it's really good that we put it out there that struggling with disabilities exists, so that this is another one of those instances where we can normalize experiences rather than minimize or stigmatize them.
Totally. How does UW protect the anonymity? I can't speak English right now. How does like UW protect their students from like people using their resources? Does it go in the student's permanent record? They will like, if you're reaching out to like get counseling or anything like that, it like won't go on your record. Like your parents like won't go to like check your like my UW or whatever. It's not gonna like pop up anywhere like that. Obviously, if you are on your parents' insurance and you do get billed, I think that's the one time where it's like kind of, you know, broken in that sense. But like none of your like professors will know, no one will know unless like you want to talk to someone about it. But It does not go on your record by any means.
Can I add?
Yeah.
And then afterwards, I'm going to ask the room if there's any questions before we proceed with the anonymized questions. before moving to Seattle, I was living overseas in Singapore, where I am not from. Mental health in Singapore is a very fascinating thing. I think the US has made a lot of progress on talking about mental health in the past X years. Singapore is much more behind in that realm. And what was really fascinating, as I was talking with my Singaporean friends, they speak British English, which is why I just try to be funny here. What was really fascinating / heartbreaking to me was some of them wanted to seek help, but in their society, when you seek mental health assistance, it goes on their government record. Right? So some of my friends, they aspire to work for the government one day in public service. But because they had that view in mind, they had the serious debate. Should I seek the immediate help that I need / want and take the risk of someone in the government, a hiring manager in the government, seeing that I sought help on my record and have a bias against me for my professional potential? In the US, I don't think you have to worry about that at this point in time. Right? So I just want to give some perspective. I think there's a lot of work to do in the US, but the structure and the societal perspective on mental health, I would say is quite favorable. Not favorable, like no one wants you to need help, but I think the stigma towards seeking help is a lot lower than in other countries around the world. Singapore is a very advanced first world country. And these are real issues that my students had to wrestle with, right? So if you need the help, please seek the help.
Yeah, and they might ask for they'll probably ask for your student ID, but again, that's just verify that you're a student.
Yeah, and not like me, trying to sneak in.
Sneak in to get the sunlights, yeah. And yeah.
Are there any questions in the room that we can help answer? We have 5 minutes left together.
Yeah.
And we have tons of questions,
We have 7.
but we want to make sure that the most urgent ones get flagged. So if you submitted a question that you really want us to answer, you can raise your eyebrows at me and then I'll be like, I got you. I'm just kidding.
There's one question that I definitely want to talk about to make sure that we have time. Someone was asking about it already being week 3 and being overwhelmed with how to balance coursework, participation in clubs, internship searching, personal health, and all of that. And do we have any advice or resources for balancing these? And I think this the fact that you're already acknowledging that you're having trouble balancing these resources is a fantastic step. I think that's a lot of this getting help for mental health or acknowledging that to take care of it is just acknowledging that you are stressed, that you are overwhelmed. And I think learning, and this is something I struggle with personally too, saying no to things that you don't necessarily need to do, and being able to kind of advocate for yourself is really important. And even for me personally, I have a Google Calendar that has all my classes and when my clubs and extracurriculars meet, putting everything, I think being really organized is going to be good in that sense, knowing when you have stuff when your club has an event, when your family has a family party going on or anything like that, making sure that you have, it's not kind of all jumbled in your head, that you have a place to kind of look at it, and knowing what's important to yourself and your own well-being versus what you're just doing to put on your resume, which is a really easy thing to want to do, but knowing that your personal health and your own well-being comes first. Do you have anything to add to that? Or
No. I also have a Google Calendar and all of it.
Google Calendar is great. Any questions?
How many of you use an online calendar like Google Calendar? Okay, a few of you. If you do not yet use an online calendar that syncs with your phone and you want help with that, I'm happy to help with it. I know some people are anti-technology, which I think since you're in info, you're probably less likely.
You guys can make your own calendar.
Yeah,
It's
you could do a
like
physical
tote bag.
calendar too, but it really it frees up a lot of mental space when you don't have to remember things in here. Right, so you can remember like your housemate's birthday instead of, actually you can write that down in your calendar too, right? So I highly encourage it. Were there other questions that you really want to cover today before we run out of time?
I think one that I want to hit on,
Yep.
and this kind of goes with a lot of other subjects, is I get plenty of sleep but still manage to fall asleep in class. Please help. So
Number one, relatable.
very relatable and very common. So I would say first and foremost, the amount of sleep you need is different for everyone, right? You kind of have to learn how to gauge these things. And okay, just a kind of like a broader thing. I feel like college is a really good time to just learn about yourself and not like about your major or whatever. Like you can grow so much and you can recognize patterns in yourself that you didn't recognize or have to address earlier in life, especially as more responsibilities kind of ramp up on you. But regarding sleep, being excited and being balanced in your own way makes you happier and more honestly more alive for whatever you're doing. And your balance looks different from everyone else's. So like something that comes to mind for me is like I tend to go on these like really long academic like studying sprees, but going outside and breathing fresh air and getting my heart rate up honestly like makes me feel like clean and happy and alive, So like even if you are getting enough sleep, that doesn't mean you're giving yourself the opportunity to get energized when you are awake. So that can mean drinking coffee if you're into coffee. That's one of those things that I say don't rely on it. It's like nice to have in your life and it works sometimes, but finding what makes you happy and energized can get you excited for your entire day and keep you awake for your classes. And that could even mean going to your professor and talking to them and asking them to clarify so that when they do touch on material that you don't kind of understand, so you tune it out, then you can get more excited and more involved in the information.
Also just like making sure you're eating well. I definitely didn't do this my freshman year, and I would like eat like those like microwavable like Kraft mac and cheeses all the time, and I would just like eat really crappy food. And it's so easy to do that because it's like quick and easy. But like if you're only relying on that and like you haven't had like anything green to eat in like a week, probably kind of like checking in on that and like eat, like there are always like options at like the dining hall or any of kind of like your guys' like living situations if you live in a group living situation. So just making sure that like you're eating healthy, like you're drinking a lot of water, stay away from anything with like a bunch of sugar. Like I feel like I am not the best at following this, but like it's important to kind of take note of avoiding like soda all the time.
Yeah. So I think we are out of time. Thank you guys for listening and asking such important questions. If you do have any follow-up questions, I'm happy to stay for a little bit
I
afterwards.
will as well.
But if you want to talk to us through email or whatever, you can contact us at LWPeer. And that's not on your resource card, but it was on the last page of the slide. So if you got a picture of that, it's also there. Great. Okay.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
guys.